Hey there, and welcome to the Create With podcast, where we talk about building with AI and no code to make a profitable SaaS business. I'm James. I'm here with Kieran.
Hello, everyone.
Great to be back. Been a busy few weeks, as always. Always
Yeah,
hard to keep
very.
up. It's
Yep.
hard to keep up with everything that's changing. But yeah, this week we've got a ton of stuff to talk about. There's been a lot more kind of developments on the whole vibe coding thing that we touched on in the last episode. I feel that's kind of continuing to explode and generate interesting takes, hot takes all over the place. So maybe we should kick off. Kira, do you want to fill us in on? There's a bit of a story that's been unfolding on X, which I think is quite an interesting case study of vibe coding versus no coding and kind of the benefits and difference between them and where we are with it. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, very interesting topic, and changing all the time. So yeah, if you haven't heard of vibe coding, it is essentially coding with AI. So AI is writing the code, and you're just prompting it. And the idea is that you just basically sit back and let it do all the work, and you accept every change it gives you, and just see what it comes out with. And you don't really care too much about the quality of the code or anything like that, which obviously that works really well for no coders like us, because we don't really understand all the code it's generating anyway. So it's very nice to be able to accept everything. And this is, totally blown up. I mean, there's been, there's a huge hackathon planned with, I think it's like Bolt.new, who are like getting loads of people to vibe code at the same time and build apps. There was a kind of hacking competition between Webflow and Lovable the other week, which had loads and loads of viewers. And then, obviously everyone and their dog is like building apps now without having to write code. And so a lot of people are saying that this is the death of developers. This is the death of no code. Anyone can build an app. But there was a really interesting story on Twitter X recently where this guy, I think his name's Leo, was basically tweeting about how he was building an app through vibe coding, and he made a few tweets that are a bit kind of spicy about how like traditional developers are dead, or the job is dead because I've just built this SaaS and it's making money and I don't know how to code. And basically the internet didn't like that, and especially a lot of coders didn't like that, so they just tried to hack his app, and they succeeded because it wasn't fully secure. I don't know the technical details, but they did manage to hack it. So all his posts went viral. He got lots of online hate, and then eventually he to his credit, he like owned up to it, and he was like, sorry, I didn't know what I was doing, and you were kind of right to expose these things. And he said, I'm going to rebuild the app in Bubble because it's way more friendly to people who can't code, which is like, it's super interesting, because I was saying a few weeks ago that like I don't think non-coders can realistically launch a production SaaS that's built with AI generated code, not with any confidence. And this has, kind of proven that narrative, at least for now, is true. And the fact that he's gone to Bubble, which is obviously a tool that we know very well and we love, is also interesting. And I saw on his Twitter timeline that he is still getting attacked by people, even in his new app. But hopefully they won't be able to get through Bubble like they did with his vibe coded app. But it's definitely interesting. A lot of people have said like it's great for building MVPs very quickly, but like to actually maintain an app that's built with a huge code base that you don't fully understand, and you're trying to prompt it to make changes, and you don't know what changes it's making every time, is not really a realistic thing that you want to do if you want to have a production app. But what do you think about it?
Yeah, I did think it was. I think it was very, very clever how Bubble jumped in there, and I think they offered him a year of free, to use Bubble for free for a year, it got loads and loads of views, that post. So I thought that was kind of marketing genius. And then he's been sharing his posts about building it on Bubble. But yeah, I think like we've kind of said before, I think I suspect that whole kind of vibe coding and AI generated apps will get to the point where they are, secure, like they're secure and they're able to kind of explain how they're made, and but it's not at that point yet. So that's why I kind of feel like I'm still of the view that the best kind of hybrid approach is using a tool like Bubble as the hub of the app and to handle all the core stuff, and then using AI generated code through Cloudflare Workers, like I recommend, to do specific tasks, and then to keep those secure with like to putting an API key on them or whatever. But yeah, I think until other tools are able to fully kind of explain and have proper version control and stuff like that in there, I think I would stick to Bubble personally as being like the tool of choice. And there's some I think we're going to talk in a little bit about some exciting stuff that Bubble are announcing as well around this area. But yeah, I personally, I still think the hybrid approach is there. I'm sure at some point you will be able to kind of vibe code, hallucinate an entire like complex SaaS app and have it work and operate itself and self-heal and all that kind of stuff. But I feel it's a little bit down the road, not far probably, but I think the vibe coding thing personally is great. Like I've used it for making simple marketing tools, little apps and stuff like that. But I think once it starts getting much bigger, it does get a bit hard to manage and really understand how workflows are executing, looking at logging and all that kind of stuff, isn't quite there. Whereas Bubble, I think that's what it does. That really does have going for it. It is the entire platform in one: the database, the logs, the hosting, the version control, the IDE, everything. So that's why, I mean, I think we're probably both a bit biased because we just kind of love the tool. But I think, particularly if you're coming from a non-programming background, it still makes sense to me to probably have a no-code editor as the prime like hub of your app, and then use little bits of vibe coded JavaScript or like web services attached to that. But to keep the core of the app in a no-code editor.
Yeah, I've been working on a hybrid app like that, and it is a really good way of learning about like coding with AI, whilst kind of having a manageable code base with not too many files full of code, which you can kind of understand what each bit is doing. And then the core of your app, which is obviously the important stuff like user auth and payments and things like that, you can do in Bubble, and then you can interact between the two just using API calls. And for me, that seems like the most manageable and appropriate way of doing things that I'm comfortable with. So you can take the stuff that Bubble perhaps won't be so efficient at doing, or maybe it's not even possible, and just put those small bits of functionality outside it. So the one I'm doing at the moment, I'm working on, is like, it's a side project, but basically it's a Bubble app where you put in a prompt, it goes to generate a directory. So you say, I want to make a directory about like the best coffee shops in London, and it will use like Perplexity to go out and do that research, and then it will come back with a response which is then turned into a specific JSON structure, and that is then sent through to my little Cloudflare worker, which I've vibe coded, and then that will generate a static HTML directory site, which, because it's static HTML and it's hosted on Cloudflare pages, it's going to be just a lot faster to load than if you tried to host that whole thing in Bubble. But the only thing the worker and the pages are doing is the worker is just generating from JSON some HTML and CSS to create this website. So like there's no like personal data that's being passed through. It's all publicly available data, and it's just a way of doing that small bit of functionality, but with a Bubble app to like back it up. And it's been so far a pretty good experience. Like I do find I'm using Cursor to help me write the code. I do find it's very frustrating the way you ask it to do something and it will write a very long answer, and it will give you like 3 or 4 steps, and then you don't know if you're supposed to do all the things, and then but it's asked you questions or to do test things as each step, but you like respond to step 1, but it's also giving you multiple other steps and so you get very confused, and then sometimes it doesn't seem to be able to see your whole code base, even though it can. Like a couple of times I've had projects where I had duplicates of everything within the same folder. It somehow made duplicates of every file, but it didn't seem to realize that. Like it should just be able to say, oh, I can see I've duplicated everything. But there were some things it's like, oh, can you make this change to this file? And I'm like, no, you should be able to make the change. I know you can, but like it kind of forgets it can. So it can be very frustrating. And other times it's like, I've got like part of the code needs to be pushed to like GitHub, and part of it needs to be deployed to my Cloudflare worker. And sometimes I forget what commands I'm supposed to be running in the terminal to get these things to happen. And it's not, sometimes it just totally forgets like that, oh yeah, he's supposed to be doing that. So that like last night I spent like an hour trying to figure out why something wasn't working. And I'd just forgotten about the existence of GitHub. I was only like deploying one of my 2 servers, and it didn't tell me. It forgot that it existed, and then I had to remember. And eventually we worked it out. But yeah, it can be very frustrating. But at the same time, it's way better than it was like a month and a half ago when I tried. I couldn't get anything working, and now I can get things working, but it's still quite a struggle.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've tried Cursor and Windsurf, and I do. I think for me, the time when they're really useful is when it's a very, very large amount of code. But for most of the Cloudflare workers that I do, I just find myself keep going back direct to Claude. I don't know, like I feel like the quality of the output is better through the web interface for some reason. I don't know if it's right or not, but yeah, I've kind of only used Cursor and Windsurf when I've had to because the code's too long, basically. But in general, the workers I try and keep each one quite specific to a use case so they don't get too big and they're quite manageable. And I mean, the other thing I have tried as well, I may have touched on it before, is the Cloudflare Workers MCP, which is everyone is now talking about MCP, but basically that's this model context protocol. It's a way that you can let, primarily, I think at the moment, it's Claude interact directly with other services. So Cloudflare have one. And when you start running it on your computer, then that basically means that Claude can take actions in your Cloudflare account. So I did try it out, and it does work well. So obviously it can pull all of your workers, it can make changes to them, push the changes back, and all of that stuff. It can do it all. But I found myself, I was like, it's not actually that hard. I actually prefer using the web interface, the visual interface on the web for Cloudflare Workers and Claude. So I'll kind of get the code out of Cloudflare Workers, change it in Claude, put it back into the console, and then you've kind of got that test area where you can test it in real time, and it's all very visual. So yeah, I think MCP is interesting, but I've not actually found myself really using it yet. And again, with Cursor and Windsurf, I do kind of feel like they're probably primarily tools for hardcore developers. I guess they're basically VS Code with AI in there, aren't they? So, I think they're super interesting. It's something that maybe we can cover as well with Create, with it's a bit of an intro to Cursor and Windsurf and how to prompt it and get around some of those things that you were talking about there, like with editing files and all those kind of common pitfalls, and maybe even how to set up MCP. Because yeah, there was a little bit of kind of getting into the terminal involved with that, which is like probably not for beginners. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that because at the moment I am having to go. It does ask me to do stuff in my Cloudflare dashboard, and often it doesn't seem to know the terminology that Cloudflare is currently using. So like it's like, make sure you have a trigger, and then I go to the triggers thing, and then it doesn't sound like it's doing is what it's asking me to do, and then I tell it, and it's like, oh, they must have updated their UI. So it would be kind of cool if I could just get it to do all that stuff. But at the same time, do I trust it not to do completely the wrong thing? I don't know. I
That's
guess I
it. I
am
mean,
trusting it.
yeah, I like the control of doing stuff manually in a way, because I guess with these MCPs they have access to do whatever they like. Like
Yeah.
once you've granted it access to your Cloudflare account, it could go in there and it shouldn't, but like it's a risk that it could start deleting other workers or changing the wrong one or whatever. And I kind of prefer that kind of element of, at least I know what I'm editing when you've got the visual editor open and stuff. And yeah, I think the thing about Cloudflare is they are iterating at an unbelievable speed. I mean, I was even recording a couple of months ago, I was doing a live tutorial on Cloudflare Workers, how to make them with no code. And Cloudflare were deploying some update to Workers, and it meant the whole tutorial wasn't working because they were updating the interface as I was working on it, and so nothing was working. But I do find like pretty much every time I log into it, stuff has moved around. They've changed it. They've improved it. And I do think a lot of people sleeping on Cloudflare Workers as being a really, really interesting alternative to things like Lovable and Bolt and all of those. I mean, I think if alone, because it is so cheap to run, like at massive scale. So I do love all these other tools like Lovable and Bolt, but I'm not 100% sure what the actual operating cost is once you. So like, what's it cost to have 1 million people use a Lovable app a month? I don't really know. Whereas I know with Cloudflare, it's going to be pretty much guaranteed the cheapest way to do anything. Like it's astoundingly cheap, and the free allowances are incredible. And I think I did a little post at the weekend. I read Cloudflare's kind of Investor Day presentation that came out last week, I think, and they are very, very heavily going into AI agents as a major new strategy. I mean, they have all the components to do it. So they kind of have this global distributed network. They have the built-in AI inference, so you can run open source models like Meta and DeepSeek, Meta's Llama and DeepSeek R1 and stuff for pretty much next to free in Cloudflare on Cloudflare hosted infrastructure. So yeah, super bullish on it. I mean, I know we kind of I in particular bang on about it quite a bit, but I really do think it's a fantastic kind of tool to familiarize yourself with, and especially with how committed they are to AI agents, and that it is pretty friendly to no coders as well. You don't need to be a developer to use Workers. Like you can do it all through the web UI. You don't have to get into the terminal and all that. Like it is pretty straightforward. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. But interesting updates though.
The reason I always use Cloudflare is because you talk about it so much, and so anytime I'm trying to think of how I could do something, I ask like Claude, could this be done in Cloudflare Workers? And usually it's like, yes, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Because it's recommended all these other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of AI agents, so since our last podcast, I had a really interesting decoded session with JJ Engler, all about AI agents and getting up to date on them. And it's a fascinating space. And it's definitely one of the things where like the hype has moved faster than the actual thing itself. But not for long, probably. So I think people are right to be learning about it. But yeah, JJ like explained, he showed like NA10 and some automations that he has running, and also another tool called Lindy.ai. And then we had a really interesting discussion just in general about what all this AI stuff means for no code tools. But yeah, it's definitely well worth watching. But like my main takeaway was AI agents are not quite ready for production use in most cases. Like I think JJ said that most of the stuff you can do with agents, we've been able to do with straightforward automations for years, but that just didn't capture people's imaginations. Like you could reliably string together all these things with AI in the middle using like a straightforward linear Zapier flow. You don't need to have an agent which is like able to decide which branch to go down. I think the promise of them is that one day you'll have this completely autonomous like employee that can make decisions and has access to all this bunch of tools. But at the moment, with the state of AI models, they're not quite there, and they do, make a lot of mistakes. And so you wouldn't want one actually replying to real emails just yet. But definitely the promise is there. And I actually had a really interesting conversation recently with a bunch of guys, because we're going to be teaching AI agents for 100 School in the next upcoming boot camp. So we were talking about making the curriculum, and the boot camp is starting in May, but we were all like, yeah, honestly, things could be completely different by May. It's so hard to write a curriculum when things are changing this fast. Especially with like all the MCP stuff, we don't know like what we don't know. We don't know how things are going to be working. And the plan is we're going to kind of teach it like, you probably don't want to put this in production. You probably want to have a human in the loop with all of these agents we're going to be teaching you. But it may be by that time that things are like rock solid and reliable. And we're going to say, actually, yeah, you can totally run these in production, but we've only had them going for the last like few days. So it's just moving so fast. And Harold from 100 Days was recounting a recent session they did where someone was doing coding with AI, and it was meant to be like a half-hour session, and he was going to like show, yeah, every time you get an error, this is what you do to correct the errors. But he just did it, and from one prompt, it just built the app, and it corrected itself the whole time, and it was just fine, and there was almost nothing to teach. It was like, well, I just showed you how to write a prompt and then get an app at the end, and that's the only input he had to have. And that's kind of the way everything's going, and it's moving so fast that certainly if you're in the education space around this kind of stuff, it's very difficult to figure out what you're actually going to be teaching in a few months.
That's it. The pace of change is quite astounding, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I think like we've spoken about a bit before, I've experimented with N8N, and I'm sure probably like everyone, I'm constantly seeing these massively elaborate kind of N8N workflows being shared all over the place. But yeah, I do wonder how many are, really being used in production. Like I've done a couple of things, and it's just I think there's a lot to learning it. Like that they're making it easier to use all the time. So like they made the AI agent thing a lot easier to work with recently. But yeah, I'm still very much using it in a way that kind of you would use Zapier, like very much workflow driven. And obviously we're using it hugely with the conference to help just with automating all the different things that have to happen. But yeah, I don't feel it's quite at the stage of being fully kind of autonomous AI driven. Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to see what OpenAI are going to come out with. Obviously, there's all these rumors that they're working on this $2,000 a month subscription, which is effectively going to operate like a low-level employee and be able to do pretty much anything that a virtual employee would be able to do. I'm sure we're going to get to that probably quicker than we think. But yeah, at the moment, it's still very much a manual process. Like there's a lot of work in building these automations, and it's quite hard. Like it's quite hard to build a very complex automation in N8N. I think I do love Zapier's approach as well, where it's more of a typed out kind of like it's a mega prompt, really, isn't it? Like rather than being so kind of like an interconnected kind of workflow. Obviously, like we touched on before, that's less controllable. But yeah, very hard to make videos and education on because it does change every week. But that's exciting as well. So yeah, I guess we're all just trying to keep up with it and be, at least as aware as we can be and using it to the best of our kind of ability to be at the front of the curve kind of thing. I think we all take for granted a lot of the time if you're listening to this podcast or if you're like reading stuff on X or whatever, you're in front of 99% plus of the population in terms of awareness of where AI is right now. And the trajectory it's on. Most people, I think, still don't really have a clue of what's about to happen in terms of kind of like AI automation and stuff. It's it's quite a massive change that's incoming, and yeah, I guess we're all doing all we can to be at the front of the curve.
Yeah, and you can imagine, like, there can't have been many times, if any times in history, when things were changing this quickly that you couldn't even, with a month to go, write a curriculum to teach a topic because it might have completely changed by then. And how is like the national curriculum, how are schools going to keep up, because their stuff is always like a couple of years out of date anyway, and then once it's in place they can't change it for like 10 years. So it just seems impossible that they will be able to keep up. And yeah, it's like, we are, just by being curious about this stuff and trying things out, we are, hopefully gonna future proof ourselves, even if no code does die, even if anyone can make an app from a prompt and app development dies, like, just knowing this stuff and being there near the start is going to be valuable, hopefully. And it, as a father of two kids, it's like, I'm constantly thinking, like, what should they be studying? What should they be focusing on to prepare for the future of work? But it's impossible to tell what that's really going to look like. So I'm just trying to teach them to be curious and not afraid to try things out and build stuff and break things and make mistakes, because I feel like just being adaptable is like the most important thing these days. But also I wonder, like, is this stuff just going to be used in our little bubble and by like all the tech companies, and are the rest of the companies in the world kind of going to dabble a bit in GPT but never really get their heads around it, and maybe it's going to take them like 40 years to catch up with this stuff? I don't know.
I think it will be quite a quick process, in that those who don't embrace it will simply disappear, because the cost benefits of kind of having an AI workforce over a human one, like, is brutal, but it's massive. Like, I think humans will probably be working more on creative stuff and like orchestrating AIs. That's kind of what I'm trying to think of it like, especially with user loop and what I'm building with that. Instead of maybe aiming to have it be like a 50-person company, I would be like, oh, well, I'd be quite happy to run this as a very small company with AI agents kind of doing all the stuff. So hopefully it will just enable people to be way more productive. So that's hopefully what will, but it's unbelievably hard to predict. But I think like anyone, all we can do, and I guess what we're trying to do with Create With as well, is just help as many people as possible prepare for that, and be have as many tools at their disposal as possible to really be at the front of it and implement AI where they're working, and be the ones championing that, because I think it's inevitable that it's going to go that way. So it's better to be aware of it and be able to do stuff with it, I think, than to kind of pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and in a lot of industries it's not a very popular thing to be talking about. I've had a few friends who have like said, yeah, I can't really talk about AI because of the industry I'm in. Like, it's viewed like really poorly, which is fair enough, because I think especially in creative industries, people are rightfully worried that their content is being used to train AI models without any permissions and any compensation, and potentially it's going to like take a lot of jobs. So I totally get that, but I think it's still worth just keeping awareness of what's possible. And like, if you want to shape how AI impacts your job and your industry, it's better to know like what's out there and what's coming, so you can at least be informed, rather than it just like totally takes you by surprise. But yeah, the best way to do that is really just to try things out, just play around with it. Most of the tools and stuff have like a free tier, so you can, and just asking like Claude or GPT to explain stuff really simply, and give you an idea for a little project that will help you learn something. I love using it as a kind of a motivator as well, and giving me ideas for stuff, and I think that's the best way to learn. But yeah, most of my friends absolutely are not interested at all. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I think I'm very much the same. But actually, it reminds me. I think you've had some AI developments in Typoro, haven't you, over the last few weeks? But you've been working on a couple of new features.
Yeah, we've been we wanted to make the, because obviously the point of Typoro is that it helps you to write LinkedIn posts using AI. So you put in your thoughts, and then it has a number of prompts which turn your thoughts into like a really nicely formatted LinkedIn post with a good hook and stuff like that. But I was still finding that a lot of the results were a bit too kind of standard, and you could quite quickly start to spot them, or spot that it was like done by AI, even though it's written in the style of like some very popular LinkedIn writers who I'm pretty sure also use AI, but they get tons of engagement. So yeah, we built in some cool features which, like, when you first sign up, it gets your last bunch of posts from LinkedIn, and then it builds a persona for you. So it analyzes your writing style, but it also writes a statement about your values and beliefs and the topics you write about, and then it uses those combined with examples of your previous posts to generate new posts. And it's like, it's really, really good. It's like one of those wow moments. You just sign up, and then it takes a few minutes to go through all the stuff and make a custom prompt for you, but it then just appears with a post that it's written, and it's like, yeah, it kind of sounds just like you wrote it. So it is really cool what you can do with just some prompting. We've also like fine-tuned the model as well on like 1,000 really good LinkedIn posts as well. So there's a lot of stuff in play, but it is good. And yeah, as we were saying, like as the models improve, it just gets better without us even doing it. So like, yeah, it's really cool to work on this stuff and just see how you can get good outputs. And sometimes it can be very frustrating trying to prompt an AI model because it just seems to ignore you a lot of the time. But as the models are improving, we are noticing like a significant improvement in the quality of the writing as well.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. And like you say, best way is to just get in there and then kind of experiment with building an app. And now you're building Typoro out into this bigger thing, kind of learning as you go how to manage all these prompting and fine tuning and all that stuff. So very, very exciting. One other thing I thought we could quickly touch on, that's going to be, I think it's going to be announced very shortly, is all the updates that Bubble's future vision of AI in the editor, and I think there's a very exciting preview of that coming out later today, and it's basically everything that I've been kind of dreaming of, and I think probably you as well. So up to now, we've kind of seen Bubble kind of publicly share their kind of beta of the AI page generator, or even an app generator where you can type in a prompt and then it's building, putting together the pages of an app and basic logic. And this next phase that's kind of being teased later today is really where, for me, it starts to get unbelievably exciting, and it's in play with kind of Lovable and Bolt, and it's getting into that area where you actually have a chat window in the editor itself that can make changes on the page, and even being able to hover over elements and click on AI suggested tweaks to elements, pre-populating your database with test data. It's a really, really exciting demo, and it's pretty much everything that I've really been dreaming for in Bubble. So I be hopefully excited to talk a little bit more about that in the next episode once that's been kind of released and everyone's seen it. But I thought that was very, very exciting. So getting to the point where we are really completely blurring the lines between like a vibe coding type tool like Lovable and then a no-code tool like Bubble, actually becoming pretty much one and the same thing. So very, very exciting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't seen the preview video, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. But obviously that does sound like a really positive step in the right direction. And if you can speed up the build time in Bubble, which is already quick, that's going to be just incredible. And the control you have when you're using Bubble compared to when you're trying to manage a code base that you don't understand at all is, just going to set it way apart for non-coders for sure. So yeah, that's really interesting and definitely something we should be keeping an eye out for. And yeah, I'm impressed how quickly they've managed to do all this stuff, to be honest.
Definitely. I mean, they've got all the components, haven't they? Like we've said before, the visual workflow bit editor and the the actual interface editor. They already have all that, so they're really well positioned to maybe completely transform the whole company. So I'm really excited to see this come to life. Of course, Bubble are going to be at the Create With conference in London on the 22nd of May. And they're going to be talking more about this in particular, I think, AI. So we're going to be we've got an exciting announcement about the speaker from Bubble very soon. He's going to be talking about how this is going to work. But I can't wait for that one. That's really, really exciting, especially after having watched this demo. It's one of those kind of mouth open wow moments. So very, very exciting. Preview tickets or advanced tickets are still available for the Create With conference at £99. So if you can, honestly, try and come along. It's going to be an amazing day. The tickets are selling really, really fast this year, way faster than last year. So make sure you get in there and get a ticket. And today we've actually just made an announcement that we're doing for the first time the day before the conference. So on Wednesday, the 21st, we're going to be having a series of kind of more intimate workshops on a series of different topics. So things like AI agents and design, and they're all going to be listed on the Create With website, but you can book into those individual kind of workshop sessions one by one. So you can log on, take a look, but it's all going to be very hands-on, how to do stuff in kind of a small kind of class type setting. So some amazing stuff there we're really excited about. Any final updates for this week, Kieran?
No, nothing other than to echo what you said. I think Create With conference is going to be an excellent place to learn about all this stuff. And yeah, for 99 quid for a whole day of learning and meeting people, there's no way it's not going to be worth 10 times that in the amount of connections and knowledge you gain. So yeah, it would be great to meet some of the podcast listeners there in person. So if you're considering it, if you're able to get yourself to London on May the 22nd, then please do, and we'd love to hang out with you.
That's it. We can't wait to see you there, especially at the after drinks, which last year were really, really great. It's just so amazing to meet people in real life who are interested in the same stuff. All this no code and AI stuff is just so exciting. So it's great to meet people in real life. So yeah, check out createwith.com for tickets for all of that now. Obviously, make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter as well. We have a weekly newsletter that pretty much contains everything we talk about here. All the latest updates in AI and no code, all interesting links, deals for the conference, tickets, all that kind of stuff is on there as well. So you'll be the first to hear about everything. You can get on that at createwith.com as well. So that's it for this week. So thanks very much for listening, and we will see you soon. Make sure you check out those tickets because we'd love to see you there in person. So that's it for this week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.